They sprang upon the local scene with spirit unequal to any others. These children of the Levant. They are the descendants of those fabled settlers of Tyre, Byblos, and Sidon, the Phoenicians. Yes, your heritage is a heritage that few others can claim. People of St. Raymonds, this is your story. When the Lebanese immigrants initially arrived in St. Louis, they settled along the Mississippi. They lived in tenement houses along the street that is now known as Lenore K. Sullivan Drive.
They always thought there was a better way because they heard so much about America. They thought the streets were paved in gold. So many felt that they would come, stay for a while, make a lot of money, and go back. Some, no, were so tired of the living in poverty and living under the yoke of the Ottoman Turk, they thought they'd find a new land, a new way to live, so that's why they came. And sometimes the relative had already come and would describe to them how nice it was to live in this country, so they would follow the relative or the first member of the family who came.
Their language is the Arabic, their liturgy is the Syriac. The followers of St. Maron, the Maronites, are a small nation that have their homes on the mountain range of the Lebanese and anti-Lebanese, so often mentioned in the sacred scriptures.
In the early church, as you know, Christianity was really founded. And St. Maron himself was a gentleman who wanted to perfect himself. So he went out to live by himself in the wilderness to become closer to Christ. People followed him, so they began to be known as the followers of Maron or the Maronites. This community grew from a handful of people to about 800 individuals. It was like a big monastery. And the people lived the faith of the monastery, even though they were lay people. It was on the banks of the Orontes River in northern Syria. So as they grew, they again were afraid of persecution. So they all moved to Lebanon. When they moved to Lebanon, it was during the time when there was early controversy in the church. The Patriarchate of Antioch, which was the place where the people were called Christian, had been vacant. There was no Catholic patriarch. And for them, this was very sad because they were attached to the Holy See, and they knew they had to have a patriarch in communion with Rome. So they elected their own patriarch, called him St. John Maron, and everybody moved to Lebanon. The patriarch became not only their religious leader, he became their the spiritual leader as well as their civil leader. And this community grew around the patriarchate and around the mountains of Lebanon. And that was really the origin of the Maronite Church.
Within Lebanon, Jesus and his disciples planted a seed of truth and salvation. This seed that was so deeply planted and then rooted was now growing within the children of the Levant. The Levant is a former name that was used to describe a blend of geographical regions that today includes present-day Israel, Lebanon, Western Jordan, the Sinai in Egypt, and that part of Syria defined by the Orontes Valley and the region of Aleppo. The southern part of the Levant, often referred to as Palestine, was known as the land of the Canaanites Phoenicians by Hebrew scriptures. The first wave of immigrants from Lebanon started to arrive in St. Louis around 1856. Their colorful dress and Arabic language set them apart. Their exotic music and food were unlike anything the people had ever been exposed to. Few learned to know them because of their small numbers. The flow of immigrants was only a trickle for the next 4 decades. Then came the 1890s. Changes in immigration laws opened wide the doors to the east. By the turn of the century, a small Lebanese colony known as Little Syria was forming just south of the downtown business district, centering on 2nd, 4th, and Broadway. On October 19, 1898, the Church of St. Anthony the Abbot was organized to serve the community of 50 families. Serving this small congregation was Father George Emmanuel, who came from the convent of San Roch, not far from Beirut, Lebanon. By 1911, the priority for this small Lebanese community was to establish a central place for prayer and worship. Father Anthony Slyman, now the pastor of St. Anthony, would come at times and say Mass for the people of Hashit. They said Mass around the small altar made of wood in their one-room apartment. 4 trustees were established in the community with the task of finding a property in which they could have a church. Finally, the trustees were able to purchase a building from the estate of J.G. Shoto, located at 92325 LaSalle Street. The church would be dedicated as St. Raymond. Their church, a 4-family flat, converted into their house of worship. St. Raymond was the church of the Lebanese in Hashit, Lebanon. All of this time, St. Raymond did not have a dedicated priest. That is, until 1912, when a Maronite priest, who was one of their own from Hashit, came to St. Louis. The pastor of the new church of St. Raymond was Joseph Karam. There was approximately 75 families in its membership. The community came together and built a small shrine dedicated to Our Lady, adjacent to the church building on LaSalle. The parishioners of the parish carried the stones one by one to build this shrine. The men maintained the structure, and the women saw the flowers were always by the statue of Our Lady. Today, the only remnant left of that old shrine is the statue in the parish courtyard on the Shoto side in the corner. The immigrants from Hashit had a great devotion to St. Raymond and the Blessed Mother. Life in this Syrian ghetto moved on, and it became apparent most of the immigrants were not moving back to Lebanon as they originally promised themselves because they were establishing roots here. The majority of these immigrants were uneducated, but they were hard workers. They were new to the land and spoke no English, but that did not hamper them in successfully peddling their goods and making a reasonable living at doing that. Between 1912 and 1944, the women of St. Raymond baked bread, rolled cabbage, fried kibbe, all in the basement of the church, which had a dirt floor initially. They sold this food and gradually developed a following of patrons that longed for the delicious food new to them and to the country. The funds raised from the sale of the food went to support the church. Abana Karam took no salary. He lived in poverty while in service to the church. Upon his death in 1944, there was not even enough money to bury him after all of those years of service. Thanks to the generosity and unselfish sharing, one family purchased a grave for Abana and a headstone in St. Peter and Paul Cemetery.